Okay, we'll make a start. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name's Ron Wakefield. I'm the Vice President of CIB, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this second CIB Presidential Seminar. The title of tonight's seminar is Mainstreaming in Innovative Building Technologies for Resilient and Sustainable Informal Settlements. And the presenter is Professor Sijekula Mbanga, who's a full professor and chair of human settlements based at Nelson Mandela University in South Africa. He's got a PhD in public administration that he obtained from Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University for a thesis focused on integrated development planning and management, examining theory and practice of alignment in intergovernmental planning for development, utilising provincial growth development plans as a case study for scrutiny. His research interests are on affordable housing, I have something in common with him in that, informal settlements, green and sustainable human settlements, urban space production, and innovative building systems. He's got strong collaborative links with academia and housing professionals in Africa, USA, UK, and some EU member countries. He serves on the board of Urban Planning Journal, the Institute of Human Settlement Practitioners in South Africa, the National Home Builders Registration Council, and as the reviewer for housing, urban planning, construction, higher education, and built environment journals. He's the commission leader for CIB W110 on affordable housing and informal settlements. Join me in welcoming Professor Mbanga. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ron, and thanks for the warm welcome. I will just start to share my screen for the presentation. Thank you very much once again. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for those who are in South Africa. Today we'll be talking to housing and innovative building technologies, but our focus on housing will be in particular on the informal settlements. Informal settlements are called in some regions slums, even in Africa. If you go to the Latin American regions, you'll hear them being called favelas, Kachi Abadis in Pakistan and other Asian countries. So we'll be talking about mainstreaming. I will not, without much ado, I will be moving to the next slides. I've already been introduced. I will not be going to where I'm located at Mandela University. I would just want us to move speedily to the topic itself. This is where I am. With mainstreaming, mainstreaming might be one issue perhaps before I talk to the outline very briefly. Mainstreaming as a concept, it's understood to be about making something normal, making it conventional, making it current. So this talk is really about exploring how innovative and systems and technologies can be made normal in the upgrading of slums and informal settlements across nations, not only in South Africa. And there is a reason why I opted for that choice of words. Whilst IBTs have been around, as they are called, in other regions they are called alternative building technologies or systems. Others would call them innovative, sustainable building technologies. So they've been around for some time. Whether we're talking about the building systems themselves or we're talking about the walling systems themselves, they have been around. And however, for some time, we have been looking at them as something non-conventional, not normal. There might be reasons for that, for some of these innovations to be seen as not normal. Maybe they do not comply with the existing national building standards in a country, or no standards have been defined for them in the country's regulations and framework. But my point is that how do we then move the built environment to a path of normalizing the utilization of innovative building systems across our different regions? We'll speak very briefly about why is that important without going into much detail around that. We'll also just go through some of the informal settlements and the conditions that they are in, the slums, and why there is necessity to embrace innovative building systems and technologies in the upgrading of slums and informal settlements. There is a point I'm making also about inclusion in STI. Um, and then I will just conclude by just picking up one case study in South Africa where there is an attempt of mainstreaming in innovative building system within an informal settlement upgrade program. We know the what the triggers of this dialogue is about climate change, urbanization, and inequality. I won't be going too much. We understand that the present world is confronted with several social, economic, and environmental challenges at this point in time. Inequality, climate change, population growth in certain parts of the globe, urbanization and rapid urbanization, which is accompanied by depletion of resources in those spaces. We're also aware that I think what we've seen with the outbreak of COVID-19 also, how these challenges got pronounced in certain parts of the globe. We call them injustices or burdens to household and communities. How different regions, as we're trying to respond to the COVID-19, we've got some lessons there without going into detail around those. Climate change is not something that is coming. We are already experiencing and witnessing its impacts right now across regions. Um, we these impacts are most acutely felt in countries where infrastructure and population are often limited and vulnerable, and resources and capacity to adapt is also limited. The UN Habitat does from time to time provide data pertaining to what types of natural disasters. I guess the colleagues in the CIB W120, we were speaking recently around collaborating on disaster risk reduction in research. We see that across the globe, by cities and by population size, the level of exposures of those cities with the studies which are ongoing, climate studies, they already project what type of disasters will be hitting which cities of the globe. We are exposed to that data as well. I will these challenges, without truly repeating that, this climate change is with us, and these challenges we are experiencing them today. What the argument of this talk is how best can we embrace scientific progress to assist
There's a
us
clock.
in
The
intervening
clock.
or addressing some of these challenges, how can we then embrace scientific progress in intervening into some of these challenges we're facing at the moment? I want to be going into much detail around global challenges. Truly, the presentation will also be shared at some point. Uh, Only to say that we also know to observe that different governments have got science, technology, and innovation policies that are often criticized for neglecting the views of marginalized groups. That's one area that we pick up, and therefore inadvertently and creating the growth of inequalities in some of those spaces. This talk is about vulnerable communities of informal settlements and slums, favelas, and how those communities can be part of the national systems of innovations through the built environment, moving into a process, a path of introducing IBTs within such settlements. Speaking about informal settlements and slums, I think I'll be going very briefly into those. These are just images that point to the type of needs and requirements within informal settlements and slums, which is a global reality. We are aware about the global trend of urbanization, which has seen to half of the world's population living in cities. But we're also aware that 1 billion of those urban dwellers are living in slums and informal settlements. For sub-Saharan Africa in particular, with the rapid urbanization in Africa, we note that 55% of the urban dwellers are unfortunately living in slums and informal settlements. And these numbers are set to grow up to 2030 and beyond. One thing about informality, I think we're speaking with Ron about it right now, is about its urbanization that is unplanned. It is about while it is triggered by urbanization on one hand, a search of better economic opportunities, as we understand in other areas, as in rural urban migration, even across borders. Of course, we also observe that in certain areas is triggered urbanization by movement of people from heated zone which are torn by wars and conflict, and people running for their life would be moving to other regions within the same country and even in other neighboring countries. We're seeing that happening from time to time. I think the built environment seems not ready to embrace this flat tide of people who are getting into the traditional urban spaces as we understand them. So I noted this as unplanned urbanization in that sense that we are on a state of constant unreadiness as cities to embrace urbanization, and that is proving a challenge to many. Informal settlements, as we understand them, even if we look across the different regions and continents, something common about them is that there are poor housing conditions, precarious living environments are observable. There is a lack of basic services, water, sanitation, energy supply within these settlements. People struggle to access clean and quality water within these type of settlements, informal settlements. There are no sanitation facilities. We do know that in certain parts of Africa, for instance, people would use the bucket system and even empty it in the nearby bushes within informal settlements. There's no sanitation facilities. Energy is a challenge. For South Africa in particular, some of these informal settlements and slums, which are adjacent formal houses, we've seen what is called izinyoka-nyoka. These are illegal electrical connections, where people are trying to access electricity but using illegal methods in doing so. Truly, the level of littering, dumping within the spaces that people are living and raising kids, there is no waste removal, refuse removal functions by local authorities as well. And the communities are also not sensitized or made aware of the implications of littering and dumping within the same spaces that they are living in. Environmental education. So this is common across. Quite often, there is limited access to health facilities and even other facilities, including schooling, depending on the location of the informal settlements. For the built environment or the building science, in fact, these are makeshift houses that are built on an unlawfully occupied land, which means that there hasn't been proper, natural building regulations are not observed because there are no planning authorizations, which no approvals. There is no demarcation of sites. There are no building plans. There are no standards. So people are just trying to make to provide a solution for their shelter needs as they arrive in cities. Most importantly, there is no security of tenure. It's another level of vulnerability of informal settlements. They stay today, but they cannot be sure that they will be staying in the same spaces tomorrow because these settlements are not formalized across nations until the process of formalization township establishment takes place. So we see this across, and the choice of location with informal housing, where we call it land grabs or true land invasion, which another issue which some NGOs have been raising with cities as to whether is it not better to designate some land within the cities to receive people who find their way into the cities, while the normal residential property market cannot provide for their needs. And as in a form of transitional housing, releasing land or designating land within the spatial plans of the cities for people to settle naturally. We haven't seen that coming up yet, I think, in various cities. Now, the challenge with the settlements being informal is that, and lack of security, is that there is limited public and private sector investment in those areas, because no ways can private sector invest in areas that are not formalized, which even makes their living conditions and their economies a challenge. Just as colleagues run through some of these I've already spoken to. We spoke about the precarious conditions. This is a story of South Africa. This settlement is in Port Elizabeth, currently known as Gqeberha, and it is adjacent our campus on the eastern part of the city. We call it Mission Vale campus. This settlement is called Vistaras Kgolehlatla, established in February 1990. And when we're speaking with the community as part of the research done by students, they said that they occupied that land 2 weeks after Nelson Mandela was released from prison. But today, with the city's interventions, decongesting that settlement, people still stay there. It has taken up to now to address the challenge of that settlement in Vistaras. I'll just be running through them and not going to them. Similarly, within the same city in Gqeberha, we've got Christian informal settlement as well. These are the conditions. We also have informal settlements called Enkanini, which the city has been trying to embark on a program of reblocking to formalize. As you can see, that there are some access roads because these settlements many a times lack access even for communities or households to to be able to receive health services because they tend to be cluttered and congested. So reblocking is one of the strategies being used to open up a bit this and declutter some of the houses built by people. You can see the state of 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 the basic services and the sewerage system where people stay and kids are raised. There are many of these. The Duncan village is 22 years old, established in the early 50s in the East London, here in the Eastern Cape province in South Africa. And we've seen over these years some government interventions through a relocation program, decongesting Duncan village, where a population of almost 21,000 is sitting on a piece of land that can only be occupied by 5,000 people. So there's been an effort to decongest and relocate communities. A challenge with that program has been that when they get relocated to Restin, for instance, the location takes them away from the city, almost 8 to 10 kilometers from the city. And there's been corresponding consequences of such choices. But we're not there. Womai is a settlement where the community occupied the land, and later on with studies, we found that within that land, there are methane gas deposits. And we found that, in fact, they occupied the land, which was an official dumping site, which was decommissioned at some point. And they then occupied that land again. A relocation program has been underway for some of the communities. This one is adjacent our Port Elizabeth International Airport. As you try to land in the airport, you can easily view such settlements. I will be running very speedily without going. I said the same in the opening that you may say the same. The situation are the same with the Ukachi Abatis in Pakistan. The conditions are truly the same. Whether you go to the Mexico favelas, again, the cluttering of the settlements, the lack of access, and these are truly the conditions. You may go to Sao Paulo, your Santa Cecilia in Sao Paulo. You can see that the conditions are truly common. You go to Mumbai in India, and we see in Johannesburg in South Africa some communities who have occupied land along the railway line, like in Mumbai here, and your Dharavi slum, the biggest slum in India, on the right are some of the settlements. You go to Kenya, Nairobi, your Matara settlements, and these are the conditions you find. The biggest slum in Venezuela will be your Petare, which governments from time to time have been trying to intervene in formalizing Petare, reblocking Petare, and a lot has been said by scholars and professionals into why it has been difficult to decongest Petare in Venezuela, in Caracas City in Venezuela, over these years. And all issues have been raised relating to corruption and everything by different governments also. But people continue to live in these spaces and give birth to children, raise children within these conditions. Very briefly, I will just be moving speedily through the issue of IBT, the importance of innovating building technologies. Because I just thought maybe today, in all the efforts that have been underway to formalize informal settlements and slums across nations, what I have observed with other scholars as well and professionals is a lack of integration of IBTs within the informal settlements and slums upgrading program. For a number of reasons, cities continue to have some projects, as we call them, that are dedicated to IBTs. And this has been viewed as we just need to pilot the implementation of IBTs. And over decades, we've seen to piloting. I think it was in 2008 when I was still in the industry and I was involved on a similar pilot program. But as I read the government plans, even today in South Africa, for instance, in the allocation of housing subsidies, you see a portion, a ministerial determination for a portion of the grant to be set aside for piloting. Hence, I'm more calling for mainstreaming than piloting, making the embracing IBTs and making it a normal business of what we should be doing because of the importance of technology itself in triggering economic growth and development into those areas. I won't be going deeper into the challenges of not embracing innovations in IBT. I've mentioned a point about inclusion, which is important. Within these communities, we do know that technology, whilst it drives economic growth, it can also be the driver of income and wealth inequality. Hence, I am driving this view or having this view which says that let us therefore, in the slums upgrading program of Kenya, begin to embrace informal settlements, emphasize the importance of embracing informal settlements, because many a times there is this desire of ensuring that people have got shelter today, but within that desire of providing shelter, which is necessary and important, we continue to use the same systems, the same solution materials, construction materials that are recreating the same challenge we are facing in the environment. So in our utmost desire to reduce the housing backlog and address the housing crisis as expressed in informal settlements, whether in the forms I've indicated or whether in vertical slums in the inner cities, I'm raising an argument which say that it is important that within the same process we begin to embrace building technologies. I won't be going deeper into it. We understand that the social impact of STI is equally important, and embracing IBTs means that you are ensuring that there's a broad inclusion of diverse actors in your national system of innovation as you are embracing them, trying to address or circumvent the challenge we experienced with the COVID-19, where some communities and regions were left behind while others were progressing with their lives because of the progress they had made in adopting digital technologies, for instance, in education. So we need to look on these communities, vulnerable communities, for inclusion in the adoption of innovative building systems. So colleagues, as I will be concluding, I thought maybe it's appropriate, whilst we speak about the issue of the importance of IBTs, you will note that I didn't mention which solutions. I spoke to the needs of informal settlements and slums which are common from region to region. It does appear that it is not only about housing. If we understand the conditions in which urban dwellers who are found in informal slums, their needs are much more than housing. When I speak about IBTs in this instance, I'm therefore not only talking about the building systems or walling systems alone. I'm speaking to the totality of innovations and technologies that can be embraced and be integrated in the planning and design of informal settlements and slums upgrading program, as we have attempted to do in the Ndambai-Kosan Green Village in Caledon Sea in South Africa. The Ndambai-Kosan Green Village is a typical project where we thought with partners in Germany from over the past 6 years that we may need to look into bringing in different innovations and technologies within that settlement development. A complex process in the sense that this project is not a university's project, it's a government project. Provincial government was intervening in a situation of an informal settlement called Canon C 504, which is about 504 is a number of households within that community who were living in informal settlement, and the government had decided to provide housing subsidies. With us being situated at Mandela University here, and with our colleagues in Germany, Potsdam University, we then approached the local authority and the provincial government for some of the land within that space to be set aside for what we would call a green village. We then requested again that we be sponsored with 10 housing subsidies that will be built differently within the same settlement. That's what the green village emerged in. As we're doing that, the Department of Science and Innovation in South Africa decided to come on board and invest with a community center that also will be built with an alternative building system, not brick and mortar. We proceeded with that, and other innovations followed. So it's an innovating financing system or model we employed. It's not a single source of funding from a single agency. It's a multiple agencies with funding from Germany for some technologies and others from South Africa. From South Africa is a multi-level state with national government, provincial government, and local government. So the local authority has done its own investment, provincial government has done its own investment. As a university, we have therefore been sitting as a coordinator of the different investment packages from both the public sector and the private sector. The CIB board, I think, did a walkabout sometime in 2022 when they held their meeting in our campus to the Green Village. I must mention that the Green Village is still developing and further developing. There are new developments of further investments also from the European Union into the Green Village. It is along the R22 corridor, economic corridor in the Eastern Cape in South Africa. This is a site layout. At the center there, right at the center, I think, I'm not sure if my cursor can be able to show. Yeah, this is the site of the Green Village itself. It is within a formalized informal settlement. The whole community was informal. As you see on the north and the south, they are, we call them breaking new ground houses. Those are low-income houses. It's a low-income community. We did a socio-economic survey. Also, as well as we needed to intervene with investment in this space, there was a need for us to conduct a socio-economic survey to understand deeper the needs and the interests of the households across different ages and what they do for living, what are the incomes, educational level, what triggers them. That baseline data was important for external intervention. So we see here, and on this side, these are the subsidies that we borrowed. These are implemented. We're using green credit technology, and there is involvement of the National Home Builder Registration Council, in whose board I serve, which is a regulator of the home building industry in South Africa, and thus a quality assurer as one of its key roles. All houses built in South Africa, subsidy and non-subsidy, have to be enrolled with NABRC for a government insurance. We call it, they all call it a housing warranty scheme. So even these houses themselves have to be enrolled with NABRC. They are enrolled with NABRC, even though we're using a different technology. But because we're using a non-conventional contract material, another body called Agreement SA is involved, which is responsible for certifying non-conventional materials that come through the market. So South Africa and other countries, therefore, have an opportunity to bring in IBTs using different materials. So Agreement South Africa is involved because it has to certify and license the company that is using this material, which is non-conventional. So there is also, maybe I must mention it upfront, this yellow circle here, it's not a circle by the way, this is this is out of a meeting of yesterday with some colleagues in Germany at PTU, and we are working on bringing in a new technology through an EU Horizon grant, which we applied for in 2023. That will be the new development again. We've got a 3-year water research project with demo sites in 6 countries, one in South Africa. It is here. Others in other countries in Europe, Spain, Greece, Austria, Germany, and the ZEC, who are part of the Desire Water, DECIRE Water. It's an EU Horizon funded project where we are testing, want to demonstrate some tested water technologies within certain spaces, be it settlements, hotels, and even at a city level. But in this instance, we opted for South Africa. I said we prefer to put it within a community, the technology we're going to use here. On this area is for gym facilities for communities here to be able to, for their wellness programs, which is important as part of settlement planning. This is the multi-purpose community center I spoke about, which is an investment of a National Department of Science and Innovation. There are functions inside. On this side, on this land, is a community garden that we are developing right now, and therefore there are inputs of agricultural scientists also from the university and a Career Foundation, an NGO within Canon-on-Sea. This is a site that we're speaking about. I'll be going very speedily on it. All we're trying to do, we're trying to pilot that green village within that space for clean water, for managing waste within a settlement, and also the importance of clean energy as well. I spoke about the MPCC on the top, that's the MPCC, and also on the lower right, I was speaking about. This is an MPCC, which had an investment also built with a non-conventional material as well. Here, because of the slopiness of this area, we opted to construct a retention pond. Rather than channeling this water out of this community, we thought that let us develop, is still under construction, as you can see, a retention pond, and then which water we intend to reclaim and maybe for irrigation, but it needs to be tested with the studies that are underway within the same settlement. That's a built environment. Within the MPCC, on the top right and left, left is a grey water purification system, an investment from the German Department of Education and Research. What we're doing here with the grey water, it is still underway with the houses on the bottom right, the 10 houses which were under construction at this stage. They are almost complete now. We are bringing in a second piping on the houses to capture the grey water and transfer it to the community center for processing within that purification system, and then bring it back to the houses again for secondary domestic uses. That's the innovation we're bringing in a water scarce area as it is, as we are in this region. We cannot be using clean and quality water for everything within households. So we're saying it is better to reclaim that water and not push it through the normal bulk system of the local authority, reclaim it for reuse. But then that brought in a cost of double piping for that purpose. We'll be looking into that. This is an electron converter of the solar power, because the MPCC itself is also powered by solar, even though there is a backup of electricity. We employed a hybrid system. Similarly with the houses, we are running for hybrid energy system of electricity as a backup. But our intention is to have them off the grid as our plan. So the main outputs of the Green Village, Ndambai-Kosan Green Village, is a green infrastructure package, which is about water. Now note, proven technologies on water supply, renewable energy itself. We have got a digital innovation hub, another investment. An innovation hub is also within the community center itself. The intention is to ensure that that community center is not utilized for meetings, is also an educational facility for that low-income community. And therefore, there has been an investment of the innovation of computers and softwares that will aid that local low-income community to also be engaged on entrepreneurial activities, and also the local school there to be able to tap on that infrastructure for exposing the learners to the real world we are in. Green housing is part of the infrastructure where we have employed or adopted the green crate bricks as well. Landscaping is our focus, the inclusion of the community garden. But this community garden is not included just for it to be there, of course, to benefit the community. But on the other hand, we are using it as a training site for the whole community. Kariega Foundation as an NGO has come in to support us in ensuring that the community members trained within that area, that community garden, go back homes in their household and start vegetable gardens within their own household. Something we've seen not happening within the urban spaces. I spoke about the gym facility. The issue I can just mention about the Green Village building and build environment planning is that if you intend to rip an orange, you have to plow an orange. A banana will yield a banana. If you intend to achieve certain environmental, economic, and social outcomes, it means your planning and design methodology should reflect that. It was clear that if we want to build houses, we can build houses and still remain with the challenges we're faced with as nations and the world. But if we want to realize different outcomes, we shall have a methodology that combines technological modules and social modules. This slide expresses that because you need to have a proper conceptualization of a project and its outcome from the start. That you will have your technological and infrastructure modules, and on the other hand, you'll have your social modules. Because embracing IBTs for water, energy, renewable energy also requires that you also trigger entrepreneurship, business support. You also engage in education and training for those communities. You also promote healthy living and sports, hence the gyms. You create those opportunities for the communities. That training has been underway. I didn't mention that we trained about 10 community youth on operating and maintaining some of the water technologies, and also on understanding even the green grid as a technology, how it operates. We also train them on areas of solid waste management, because I've got a training site in the Green Village for solid waste management. With Berlin-Brandenburg Vocational Institute in Germany and Pottelsdorfer TVET College Engineering Campus, we are planning to send a group of students and young people from this community to a 3-month training in 2026 in Germany, to be hosted by Berlin-Brandenburg Vocational Institute, because we realized that in South Africa, we don't have within the technical and vocational sector curriculum that embraces IBTs in the manner we were trying to bring in the Ndambai-Kosan Green Village. I won't go into what outcomes we are seeking. It's about sustainability in community. I think in the interest of time, these slides are truly talking about what we should be seeking to do. I will just conclude by speaking to non-IBT challenges through our learnings and lessons in the Ndambai-Kosan Green Village and elsewhere. Something that we need to note when we adopt IBTs, whether for building walling systems, for the structures themselves, different materials, and whether for water, for instance, is that they will be generally expensive at introduction. And there's been that tension in policy, in government policy, about the fact that some of the IBTs are expensive. Expensive means for housing policy, there is a defined housing subsidy quantum. Then some of them come above that quantum or threshold because they are new, because we are not developing a scale as well, and therefore they come as expensive. But we've also been speaking to government about the importance of life cycle cost analysis, cradle to grave analysis of the benefits of some of these technologies. Whether we're going to win that debate is something else. Secondly, political will is important for adoption of innovations and technologies. You need leadership support to bring them in. Cultural stereotypes at times are equally important, hence the importance of community training when you are bringing in the green technologies. I was involved on a Water Research Commission study some few years back on earth agri technology sanitation in one community in South Africa, where government intervened with that technology for sanitation facilities. But when we did a user accident study of that community, we realized that some of them never used that sanitation facility. For one reason, they realized later that they have to interact with the system itself. It's a urine diversion system, but then it requires some human input for the bulking of the solid waste, which is odorless though. But the fact is that customary or culturally, one wouldn't interact with that business as it is. So some of them decided not to use. There will be those cultural stereotypes as well. Lack of knowledge is also important, hence training and education. And importantly, the need for local skills. When we embrace IBTs, we need to understand that even your building inspectors need retraining and reskilling. And more importantly, they wouldn't be artisans or handymen who are able to help households in dealing with maintenance issues or installing the technology. So there must be a focus on skill development and a review of curriculum in the built environment as well. Of course, there will be uncertainty about their performance because they are new. It's normal. The same was the case with concrete brick as it when it started in the evolution of human settlements and housing. The challenge with unknown alternative materials is also the issue that the access to them for alterations, extensions of houses, and any other need that households or homeowners may have. That area is equally important. What is the extent of access of the materials within those localities? Basically, as I conclude, embracing IBTs needs also to understand that there are different role players in that. As I conclude, surely government will be, because about settlement, it's about places and spaces, geographies, and government has got rules and regulations, which must also be reviewed or amended in certain instances to conform with the new requirements, because the regulations that exist are for the existing infrastructure and materials, and therefore new norms and standards will be required. We have researchers as universities, but it includes innovators themselves. Technology developers are equally important. But something to note, researchers are not only technology developers and system developers, they must include social, economic, and environmental researchers to follow the impacts of the or the benefits of these technologies. The market is equally important because you can't introduce a technology in a space when there is no uptake at the level of the market. And when people need the technology, they can find it with ease. Critically, the end users, the communities for social acceptance, that is also important. Colleagues, that's basically what I needed to say for today in calling for the mainstreaming of IBTs in affordable housing and informal settlements interventions across the globe and beginning to propose how best perhaps one feels we should proceed with embracing innovation technologies and what do we want to look at. My last point is just a statement I made in 2024 when I was delivering an inaugural lecture at Mandela University. I realized as I was making my way to the podium that, in fact, while housing is not just about houses, human settlements are much more than housing. A point I can make here is that the built environment and this commission will need to understand that we're not just dealing about the structures, the walls, the roofs, the foundations. We're dealing about the totality of a house as it provides also shelter, the importance of waste management in a house, the issue of energy of a building itself is important, the issue of water and water resource. When we speak about innovating, therefore, we cannot be looking only on the side of the building systems alone. We must take interest on the issues of energy performance, on the issues of water. We can't embrace building systems or walling systems whilst we proceed in the normal way on the issue of water supply within the same building or the same structure. Thank you very much. I will pause there for now. Gracias, medallas, obrigado. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mbanga. Great job in explaining the challenges to us and what's necessary in the solutions. So I've really enjoyed your presentation. I'd like to now open for questions from the audience. If you could raise your hand in Zoom, I think I'll be able to see you. I think it was very interesting how you concluded your talk about houses being more about community than just a house. So I think that's very relevant for probably all of us who are researchers in the built environment. Is it Jan?
Yes, good afternoon. It's Jan Heervoet from the University of Pretoria. Professor Mbanga, it's so nice to see you online again and to hear about this interesting project. I've heard a lot about the EcoSun project, and it's really nice to see how it's developed. Um, I'm I'm interested in a question that I'm not sure if the answer is easy, but I do think that's a challenge that we've experienced in the work that we've done in Tshwane is this question about density that you mention up front. Um, and the fact that in many ways we're often confronted with informal settlements that once it formalizes can only accommodate a fraction of that community and therefore brings in one would even question an added burden or a justice question about the community that needs to be dislocated in that process. And when I look at the work of the EcoSun Village and the typologies that are proposed, reflecting on that question about density, how do you see that necessarily possibly changing if we were to go for higher densities? Is there a reason for the approach you followed there? Is it a funding question, or is it the nature of the IBTs at the moment that forces us to think of it as single stand homes, or whether it could lead to higher densities as well?
Yeah, maybe I will take that straight away. Thanks, Jan, for that. Yes, you're raising an important point. Maybe I will respond first with the Kosan Village one. We found that project in motion, the formalization. We came almost towards the tail end of that development. And we are even saying that in our replication efforts, we shall have to engage an authority um, on a greenfield development in its sense. That means designing a green settlement from scratch. The challenge with finding it in motion is that community engagement was already completed by the local authority. Communities had already made their choices around the types of houses. The potential of medium density housing in that area is well placed because that community township is adjacent to the Caledon Sea and with the tourist destination as well. And it's urbanized in a broader rural context. It should have been impossible. But Jan, the truth is that it's a function of it's a function one of planning, housing planning in a city. Their appetite as professionals for medium and high density housing. That's a first. Is there an appetite at that level, or they would want to proceed with the normal methodology of providing housing, your standalone houses, which their structure, including their procurement systems, have been designed for that. You may talk about their suppliers in the database would be companies who are more on building standalone houses. You see, there will be those one professionals as well. But secondly, the housing policy in South Africa talks about the choice of a beneficiary. It is important for the early stages of community engagement, we call it social facilitation, that these choices are put forward to the community by professionals, that there are benefits for the community in us going medium density. Exactly the same point you are raising, Jan. It has happened in the Visceras informal settlement. When we arrived there, for research and engagement at some point with a student, an architecture student from where was he was from Germany, but another university. He was doing a master's, but he used the city as a case. This point was raised, but unfortunately, the city said, please don't trigger that discussion again. We have already agreed with this community that we'll relocate some of them. It was difficult to arrive at that decision. So we had to let it as it is. So it's not something that cannot be achieved. There are projects, low-income projects like Sakasonke here in Port Elizabeth, which is a medium density housing, but utilizing the low-income subsidy. It's possible through proper facilitation. What I've realized, because the issue now with Vistaras, Kholihlahla, is that the process of formalizing it, in particular on the relocation side, people are not willing to move and be disconnected from their social networks built since 1990. But I was then saying to the city, had you provided this option of medium density housing, maybe in some weather as in complexes, you might have avoided a need to take people out of their spaces they are connected to and where their livelihoods are established, by the way, to some another area around Motherwell. So social facilitation and presenting options, and not only present these options, present their advantages and disadvantages at the same time. You are not going for medium density. It means you are trading that for relocation, and the relocation will place you into this situation. Yes, it's a function of engagement, truly. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very complete answer. Any other questions that people would like to raise? I realise we're a few minutes over the appointed time, but we can keep going. I realise some people will need to leave. The next question, Professor Masawa.
Hi, greetings everyone. Mine is just a quick question. Prof, you covered some community involvement mechanisms in your presentation, and also elaborated on some specific efforts that you've made in Ecosan to involve communities in the streamlining of IBTs. So I just really wanted to find out if there are some communities that initially resisted or rejected the introduction of these technologies, and how you might have addressed that. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Perhaps, Prof, yes, the issue first is that we are introducing the technologies on a small segment of that community, just a little pilot of 10 homes that were introducing those technologies. And the whole community has been involved in that. There hasn't been real resistance because the broader community is on the conventional housing system as we found the project at its tail end. In fact, there has been support because of what we did was to present the benefits of the IBTs we're bringing into that community. We regard it as a space for learning than anything because it's a small scale. Resistance might come, it has come in other areas where you want to go IBT for the whole development. I know one project in East London, Tembeleke Manyane, there was a resistance on 50% of the community, and what ended up being the product of that settlement was 50% on conventional, and the 50% went for non-conventional because the 50% of the community understood the benefits that come with the technology being introduced there. There is natural resistance that would come, but not in the Ecosan Green Village because it's a small pilot of 10 homes. Those who were keen to, what do we say, to sponsor, because they need to agree for their housing subsidies to be utilized in a pilot. There wasn't much because of the overriding benefits that were explained to them. The environmental benefits of the eco-friendly brick itself as a nature-based solution, in that it will reduce a need to heat up the house with energy or other means. When those must be explained in communities, we have ran community workshops. I think one has to invest on community engagement, community workshops, and also ensure that there is a training. They need to be exposed. There must be training. Even the companies that are bringing the technologies, solar power panels, were part of their training schedule to explain to the community members and to the group of young people how these are operated. And they got certificated in some way for that. Yeah. It wasn't much resistance because it's a small pilot, but those who agreed understood the benefits of the use of those innovations in their houses.
Thank you. Yam Keller?
Yes, good evening. I mean, good afternoon. Thank you, Prof, for the insightful presentation. Prof, you highlighted the 4 key actors in driving sustainable innovation, which I found very interesting. So my question is, now when we're considering all these actors, the researchers, government, entrepreneurs, and the community, now is there a particular hierarchy or sequence in which with the particular project, or rather any project that is currently in place? Is there a particular hierarchy or sequence in which they ideally engage? For instance, like, should the process begin with the community to ensure social acceptance from the start, or is it more effective for researchers or government to lead first? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Mkela. Yeah, the sequence is important. That is an important issue because anything can go wrong when you are introducing an innovation in a community. It has happened elsewhere, where an innovator would find its way into a community and try and do everything to try and persuade the community to buy their solution and promise everything. That is problematic. There has to be leadership. There has to be leadership. My experience, I think, right now, even with the Ecosan Green Village, is that government must lead, but not alone. Government has to work with the researchers in the built environment for a number of reasons. It's not easy for government. It's a change management issue. I mean, it includes our own professionals, our own graduates from universities who get into those spaces. It's not just easy for government to move out of its processes that they are used to. There is a disruptor in embracing IBTs. And as I mentioned, that even your construction supply chain has to be adjusted because you can't issue out a tender, a tender for all, because these systems work differently. You may have to have a tender where your tendering system that is targeted for innovating building systems, and even then have a proper specification for that. So the construction supply chain process itself has to be disrupted in some way. I don't have a close word to use. Disrupted might be harsh, but there must be a shift of some sort in the system. We call it the researchers socio-technical systems. So there will be a shift. Government has to lead. It's true, because they drive policy, their policy implications, their regulation issues. Like I mentioned with the double piping, you might understand in South Africa that a housing subsidy might include infrastructure. But now the housing subsidy is about connecting the house to the bulk system. Now, if we say now we wanted to capture grey water and bring it back, it brought an additional cost now on the infrastructure. The next question was, who's going to bear that cost? Then government said we can't because the national policy says we must do only this. Then we had to speak as a university to the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, which is leading the innovation system in South Africa, to say it can only be you for now who can absorb that cost of that sanitary pipeline for the grey water connection to the community center. Until such time, we have been able to persuade the housing sector, called human settlements, to adjust its national housing code, which is regulations, to provide, to be flexible for this function we're bringing in. Because if it's going to be applied across South Africa, it means the housing code must be adjusted a bit so the housing quantum can accommodate an opportunity of grey water not pushed to the bulk but reused within households, and the benefits attached to that. Government must lead, but I can promise you, not alone, but with the researchers going together. Yeah.
Very wise words. I might thank you everyone for your questions, and thank you for the very comprehensive answers, Professor Mbanga. I might bring the session to a close. Anyone who's got further questions, I'm sure Professor Mbanga will be happy to entertain them by email. This session has been recorded also, so it will be made available in the next couple of days. So thank you everyone for your attendance, and thank you very much, Professor Mbanga. Please join me in thanking him.
Thank you very much, Ron, as well. Thank you, colleagues. We take the conversation forward. Thanks.
Good evening or good morning, everyone, or good midday.
Good night. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you
Bye.
so much, Prof.
Thank you.